Good morning. Good morning. What a glorious day to awaken to a greater version of ourselves. And that's my hope for all of us today. As you know, my program is the New Design for Living, and it's a program that offers me and others this opportunity to understand why things are changing as they are changing and what is replacing that which we have known all these many years. And so one of the things about the New Design for Living is that it has required me to get very serious about this thing that we call oneness. I'm going to read the definition I found for that word so that we are, at least for our time together today, in agreement with this concept. The fact or state. So for me, the fact, it's a truth. State means it's an experience of being unified or whole, though comprised of two or more parts. So for me, I can only speak from the personal, as Dawn was saying, because after all, what else can I know except my own experience? But the good news is I believe that the personal is in the universal and the individual is in the collective, primarily because we are all one. So my hope today is that my sharing from my journey since the last time I've been here will inspire you, will make you feel that we're walking together, you're not alone, and even perhaps give you a few ideas about how to continue your own walk, if you're on it, to this idea of oneness. It's not a passive moment. You know, love and light is a beautiful thing. However, in my personal experience since April, this is a commitment. This is a real serious commitment. It's not even a passive choice. I mean, intellectually, we all get it. We can all sit here and talk for hours about oneness. We intellectually understand it. We know that it's been proven by science. We've even felt it. But what I have come to realize is that right now, at this specific moment in our lives, it is a serious choice. And so I invite you today to consider up-leveling your commitment to this path of oneness. And why is it such a serious choice? Because you are choosing to step out of the matrix. You're choosing to step out of the entire human condition. This is not a light thing. This is the entirety upon which everything has been established. And that is why this is such an enormous time, because we have awakened to this and we are choosing something new. Everything is built upon separation and duality. Again, something that this group knows a lot about. However, I don't know about you, but I can still get in the car after a day like today and have an issue with someone's driving because my mind is telling me that they should be driving like I am. So we'll talk a little bit about that ego mind that is always working in that way and what we can do to have more dominion over those kinds of moments. So just understand that everything out there is built upon separation and duality. And so when you commit to oneness, when you say, I want to live out of unity consciousness, I want to be the ambassador of love, you're saying that I am willing to release myself from the separation and the duality that I've built my life upon. And I have noticed society has built its life upon as well. And so to me, that is truly one of the greatest declarations we could be making right now. And for me, I'm not just making it for myself and the freedom that it is giving me, I'm making it for my nieces and my nephews. I'm making it for the children that they're having, because that is something that I feel very, very strongly about. I'm involved in their lives. I see what their challenges are. I see the kind of world that they are living in and trying to figure out. And I feel very responsible to make sure that I can clean up my mess as quickly as possible so that I can add to the ripple of love in my family and in their family as well. So let's just talk about the human condition for a moment. Bruce Lipton. I mean, if you don't know who Bruce Lipton is, I highly recommend that you go on YouTube, find some videos from him, and just chew on him because he is such an amazing man. This information comes from a Gaia show I was watching not too long ago. And again, a lot of us know this, but I thought it would be helpful for us to really tune into what separation really is and how it became the condition of our experience before we get into the walk into and back home to oneness, because that's the irony, right? Everything out there has been built on separation and duality. Meanwhile, the fact of life is it's just one thing happening. That's been proven to be factually true. So he was talking about how the last trimester of a woman's pregnancy through the age of 7 is the time by which that life is being told what is true. During this time, the function of the brain is at its lowest vibration, known as theta. So it's just below conscious awareness. And what I thought was so amazing is that theta is the hypnosis state. So a child is taking all of their environmental experiences and is downloading them into their subconscious mind as what? Reality. And the rules for life. This is the way it is. And this is the way you are to be in that which is. So we are watching our family, our parents, our siblings, society, our neighbors, religion, whatever it is that's influencing us. And from the last trimester to 7 years old, that is what we have taken in, we've absorbed, we've downloaded as the way life is. Now, what's fascinating, in addition to it being a hypnotic state, is that we're not the gatekeeper of the information. We're not in a time of our lives when we're like, okay, you know what? Let me think about whether or not I want this to come in as truth. We're not given the opportunity to edit the information. It's simply coming in and being downloaded. Of course, if that is a healthy, expansive, and good modeling, then you're coming into a pretty solid experience. However, for most of us, because our parents were getting their own downloads and maybe not as awakened as we are, there are some things along the way that we've all been healing. How are we doing? Everybody okay? Okay, just checking in. I know it's a large topic, and I know we're going there today, but I feel like it's a really important moment for us to get really serious about whether or not this is for us. And don't get me wrong, I've been getting ready to be ready, to be ready, to be ready, to be ready for this moment. And I do feel like because of some of the things I'm sharing with you, I'm at that 51%. Like, you know, sometimes when you feel like even going to the gym or your health or whatever choices you make, that you're very clear about being at 49%. You can feel it, you can taste it, but you're just not quite there. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on the other side. It's a little more effortless. That's what I'm feeling these days. So, as I said, that which is coming in, you are not able to review, nor do you really understand what is even happening because you're in this hypnotic state. You're simply learning this is the way life is supposed to be, this is the way you're supposed to be in it, and these are the rules by which to play. In the end, I downloaded someone else's behavior, believing that it should be mine. Talk about an awakening. Not blame, because I understand now. And so because I can understand, I'm willing to take care of things on my own terms. The other thing that he was talking about is that the conscious mind is creative. And this is something I really can relate to. He was talking about how you try to recreate. How many people are actively rewriting their scripts or trying to recreate who they are in this world? Okay, all of us. And how many of us in that process have had moments when it's just not quite happening? I have, right? What am I doing wrong? It's always that. But what I learned by watching this is that though I try to recreate the momentum of the program, the momentum of that download and that programming still has sway in my experience. It's the 51%, right? And so as I awaken to this, I have more of an opportunity to change that. And that is what I have been actively doing. So if you're in an experience where you're not quite sure why it isn't happening yet, have respect for the power and the influence that this programming has in our lives. You add a bunch of people and you call it family, society, whatever, and wow, talk about something you've got to keep pulling yourself out of, the muscle you have to keep strengthening so you can be in the world, but not of it. All right? So, with that understanding, what are some of the steps that I have experienced that is helping me in that walk back home to my true state of oneness, not just to myself and to my own source, but with all of you? The first, awaken to the programs. If you were here the last time I talked, I was in the midst of awakening to some significant programs in my life, and I talked about what that was like for me. Again, intellectually understandable, yeah, we know it, but the experience was painful. And that's okay that it's painful because I understand what I am awakening to, which is, maybe some people use the word a lie or something that was false all this time. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. But in awakening, not just to my living in separation from life, from source, but a lot of times from my own self, kind of painful. But I'm committed. So I walked through that with the help of friends, with the help of my spiritual practices, with the help of professionals. I have begun the process of really being willing to be available to the awakening of programs. What am I talking about? Program of loyalty was something I talked about, right? I grew up with a program that was loyalty to other. No, they didn't mean for that to be detrimental to my upbringing or my growth as a person. It was simply what their culture and their upbringing taught them. So naturally, that's what my parents taught me. However, what I wasn't taught, though, was the other side of that coin, which is as you're in service to another, oh yeah, it's okay also to be in service to myself. At the time, it was called selfish. Who wants to be selfish? I didn't want to be selfish. Now, of course, we understand the whole idea of the oxygen mask on ourselves first and how important it is to be selfish in our time, in our attention, in our decisions, so that we can be more available to those that we care about, to our jobs, our relationships, our friends, society in general. All sorts of programs. The big one is the program of unworthiness. Now, as a Catholic, like we talk about affirmations, right? So I grew up in a spiritual path, the science of mind and spirit. We all learned about the power of affirmations. But I look back at the affirmation I was saying every single Sunday. Lord, I am not worthy to receive you. So I recognized a power, and I was told through repetition that I wasn't worthy to receive the blessings of that Lord. Then, of course, the rest of that is, but only say the word, again, outside of me, and I shall be healed. So whatever your upbringing is, I want to encourage you to spend some time being open to what kind of programs you grew up with that maybe are still running the show. Other programs, not enough, unlovable, being left behind. There are many programs for us to take a look at and to commit to overriding. So the first process is you awaken to them. The second process is you have compassion for those who instilled those programs in you because you realize they didn't know any better. Then you have compassion for yourself, the one that was inside those programs all these years. Because the fascinating thing about programs is that they come with a script, a narrative, a plot, characters, right? And when you start looking at yourself in the program, you can see how that's true. I mean, look at the program of siblings, oldest, middle, youngest. Books have been written about it, right? And when I look at the program that I was in as the youngest, the character I played, what I couldn't do, it's absolutely fascinating. What's true now? I've leveled the playing field. We're all equal because I'm in a new design of living. So the programs, some of the other things, this idea that in separation and duality, we're programmed not to have any power. And as a result, the outer world is the source of that power. The outer world is necessary for me to access source or God, right? Think about that. What's the role of the priest or anyone of that nature? They're the middleman between me and my source. Guess what? Turns out that's not true anymore, which is why churches are falling away rapidly, because people have awakened to their own true divine nature. That was a game changer for me. 25 years ago, when I woke up to that, that was rough. That was not only overwhelming to understand, you mean it's at the source of my own being? But then to realize how delayed my relationship to it was, because I was told I needed someone to be the middleman to access that source. That was years. That was years of work right there. So now what are we doing in the new way? We're living from the inside out. Health is another area where we are told we don't have any power. Who do we need? The doctor. Not to dismiss their presence, that's not what I'm saying, but to completely surrender ourselves to these outer sources is not working for us anymore. So we go from, I have no control because the cause is outside of myself, to, I am the cause. Wow. Wow. Really? Wow. Okay. What does that lead to? Stepping out of victim consciousness. This is a big one. This is a big one. Our entire society, all of the programs out there have that victim consciousness. I'm a victim, you're the perpetrator. Turns out I've been the perpetrator and you've been the victim as well. But I have come to realize that being in that program will keep me trapped forever, and I am here to experience my freedom. Let's look at this victim consciousness. It's very subtle. I consider myself to be fairly awakened. However, I'm also humbled by the subtleness now of what remains. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm in there like a gardener. I'm like, okay, I got the big rocks out. That was the easy part. It's the little tiny pebbles now that are impeding my full growth. Victim, I'm powerless. Perpetrator, you're powerful. What does the new design model offer us? Turns out I'm a creator. I'm neither one of those things. I'm a creator. How do I step out of being a victim and step into being a creator? How do I take back my right to be the architect of my own life? Number one, my healing is my responsibility. My healing is my responsibility. What does that mean? That means I'm going to do whatever I have to do to be completely healed. What I did last year, which I had never done before, is I used energy medicine as a means by which to heal my trauma because talk therapy wasn't working anymore. I also worked with Catherine, who is phenomenal in her gifts as well. I recognized this energy field. I came to understand how trauma is stored in the brain, how brain spotting and tapping heal the trauma that talk therapy can't heal. Hundreds and hundreds of dollars, hundreds of hours, and the healing, I would say, is complete as it relates to that particular trauma. So healing is my responsibility. What else happens? You realize that the other person is what? They're acting out of their own programming. Once I awakened to my programming and the role I was playing in the situation, I also got to see, oh my goodness, that perpetrator is acting out of their program, who they were told they are, what they were told they deserve because of who they are, and what they had to do to get it and maintain it. So it activates compassion for them and compassion for yourself, because we have all been the saint and the sinner. That's just the way it goes. The other thing that has made the biggest difference is I have a deep, strong desire for freedom. I remember reading The Untethered Soul, and there was a moment in the beginning of that book where he talks about emotional freedom. I'm an Italian Catholic. I had never known anything called emotional freedom. I was just like, wait, what? I can be free from this drama, from this heaviness that my ancestors have passed through the line, because that's just what happens? So my desire for emotional freedom is greater than my desire to be stuck in victim. My desire to be emotionally free is greater now than my desire to be right, to be heard, to have my story matter to the other people in the play. It's greater than my desire to hold a grudge. This is the stuff you got to give up. This is the stuff I had to give up in order to be more available to this thing we call love. Also, I had to be willing to own what's mine. While I'm in the victim and perpetrator consciousness, while I'm looking at what was being done to me, guess what? I had to take a moment and be real about what might I have done to the other that I'm still justifying, but in this consciousness of awareness, I realized might have been hurtful, might have been disrespectful to them. It is a powerful process to go through any situation you've been in and give yourself permission to see it through the eyes of what is mine to own here. And whether you tell it to the person in public or one-on-one, or whether you just do it like I did inside my own home, there is something to be said about owning your part in any situation in which you feel like you have been victimized. Again, I am not saying that people have not been abused or experienced victimization. We have. However, what are we going to do with it now? Are we going to stay with it? Are we going to use it for the rest of our lives as the reasons why we can't fill in the blank? Or are we going to see it as an opportunity to change how we look at things so that, as Wayne Dyer says, the things we look at change? What happens next is the willingness to apologize. I did this video about the new design for the apology because I was waiting for someone to apologize a long time. When are they going to apologize for what they did to me? It's a natural part of being in the program of separation and duality and victim consciousness. But what I realized is that in the new model, in the new earth, whatever phrase you want to use, the apology is for you. How's that true? Because especially amongst people like ourselves, but certainly everyone else, the apology is your moment of awakening when you go, oh my goodness, those words I said, that thing I did, turns out it was unconscious, came out of a program, however you describe it, but ultimately you realize it's not congruent to who you want to be. It's not congruent to how you want to act. So the apology is not the ego mind saying, you're not going to apologize to that person. They don't deserve it. Look what they did to you. No, it's the heart saying, you know what? I want to acknowledge that how I treated you, how I spoke to you is not congruent with who I say I want to be. I offer these amends and I hope that you'll accept them, or however that is for you. Can you feel how different that is? It's a very fresh and I feel liberating approach. The last one I've said every time I speak by Ram Dass when we're talking about forgiveness, because forgiveness is key to the path of oneness. For me, you can't have stuck energy and be free. It's just not possible. You can have a lot of freedom, but until this kernel, this piece is dealt with, you're never really I'm never really going to have the fullness of the freedom that I know is available to me. So look courageously at where you might have stuck energy. Be willing to be brutally honest with yourself about where there may be stuck hurt or an area where perhaps you've not made amends because of how you've trespassed against another. Even if it never left your thinking, even if the feeling never left your heart, those are even the most important and less obvious ones than the actual one or two that has a memory. The last part of this, I love you, I forgive you, and I can't play with you at this time. I love you, I forgive you, I understand, and I'm not able to have an active relationship. Turns out that's called a boundary. Didn't really learn that. It's okay. I don't know that my parents were able to teach me. I know that they weren't able to teach me more than they were able to, but this is no longer their responsibility or their fault. A boundary that comes out of a new program of worthiness, self-love, self-care, self-compassion. So forgiveness is the ultimate gesture of my belief in oneness. Forgiveness proves to me I'm free. I'm free. I love you. I understand. I mean, I've never read the Bible, but I'm telling you that one of the greatest stories is the story of the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, whether you think it's true or not is irrelevant. The story, symbolically, is super amazing. Here's this guy who's going to be taken to his death. He's going to be crucified. Pretty brutal. He's got his tribe. He's got his followers. And he says, basically, in my interpretation, look, I got to go meditate. I got to go pray. I got to figure out what is going on here. Please guard this area in consciousness, not just physically. Hold a space for me. That's why that's such a powerful thing to say to each other. Let me hold a space for you while you uncover and unravel your programs, right? It's an energetic, it's a vibrational gift. He says to them, hold a space for me while I go in the garden. What happens in the garden? I love this story because he was a human. Not once, not twice, 3 times. What does he say? Can't you give this to somebody else? Can't you give this to somebody else? I don't want to do this. But what did he realize in that process of communion with his source? It was his to do. It was his to show, you can kill me, but you can't take life. Why? Because life is energy, and you can't kill energy. You can crucify me. You can show the appearance of death, but turns out my spirit is eternal. That was his to do. So what happens, right? So now his resistance to what is and why he's here. I've had resistance to this walk. Are you kidding me? I mean, how many people had resistance to forgiving somebody? It's like, oh my gosh. But he purifies himself for the task. And that's what I'm asking you to consider today. Purify yourself for the task. Because what does he do when he comes out? It's just incredible. One of the apostles slices off the ear of the guy that's taken him to the crucifixion. What's the first thing that Jesus does? He picks up the ear and puts it back on the guy. You know what that's called? Love. That's somebody who's in the upper realm of oneness and unified consciousness. That is what is available to us today. Whose ear can you give back to someone? Because you know how painful it is to wait to be forgiven yourself. That's one of the reasons why I embarked on a path of forgiveness, because I know what it feels like to wait to be forgiven. Once I realized I could forgive myself and set them free, I realized I didn't want anybody to feel the juice that comes with waiting to be forgiven. That's why forgiveness is a big part of this path to oneness. So instead of looking outside of yourself and adjusting your behavior to the rules of life, and I'm not saying we do that in this group, we're probably the leaders of those who don't do that, but just in case there are a few pebbles where we still do that, We adjust our behavior to that which is internal. You know, I love this phrase, artificial intelligence. Really? Seems like it's just all divine intelligence to me, but okay. You want to label it artificial? That's how disconnected we are. Do you understand what I'm saying? If we were connected, in my opinion, if I'm connected, I'm calling it divine intelligence. Can you see the law of gravity? No, but do you have the experience of it when you step off the roof? Yes. Can you see the law that cracks open a seed and calls forth the bloom of a flower or vegetable? No. But does that stop you from being a gardener? Of course not. You know something does it. You know it's not you. You just have to do that which is yours to do. Sound familiar? So this is the opportunity that we have today. And the last part, along with awakening to the programs, moving through a process of releasing yourself from the program of victim and perpetrator, being aggressive and assertive with your forgiveness, is have dominion over your ego. So I was at an event yesterday, and there was someone else who's very prominent now in our town as it relates to MC and auctioneer work. So this person was the MC for this little event I was at. Came over, said hello, asked me how I'm doing, and he tells me all the jobs that he has, and I'm feeling it, And so I get in the car, and I'm just like, wow. Look how quick that happens. What is my ego mind doing? It's telling me a story of neutral facts. This man is just telling me the gigs that he has. And what's my ego mind telling me? Because it has to. Because it lives in separation. What's a part of separation? Competition. Why competition? Because in duality, there's not enough. That's the program of scarcity. Gotta get mine. My slice of the pie. So my ego mind is telling me, who does that guy think he is? I know who gave him all those gigs anyway, right? That whole competition and judgment is kicking in. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be so great to tell tomorrow on my talk. Because even though I'm actively doing this, I'm also actively aware of how subtle that juice is. I even texted my friend who now I'm working with because I was going to tell him about what I believe to be true. And I saw the text go out, and he wrote back and said, hey, I'm having dinner. Can I call you back? And I wrote back and said, you know what? I actually wasn't going to say something nice about someone, so I'm just going to let it be. Compassion, course correction, as quickly as possible. So have as much awareness and dominion over your ego as possible. Your ego comes out of the program of separation and duality. It has its job. It's there to protect me. It's there to keep me safe. It's here to help me survive. Survival of the fittest. Really? When we talk about that, let's think about it from a spiritual perspective. Health and wellness fitness, spiritual, and unity consciousness fitness. The ego is made from duality. It's the gatekeeper. It will always present to me facts as threats because of these various programs of competition, scarcity, judgment. So I want to invite you to question what your mind presents to you. The great Byron Katie. 2 great questions. Is that really true? How do I know it's true? How do I know that he was trying to one-up me? How do I really know? Turns out, I don't. Seek neutrality. Seek the place where the pendulum just goes like this. And when you swing this way or that way, just recognize it. Why is that happening? What's the belief? What's the program? And what do I have to do to come back to a more neutral, calmer place? Turns out, love is freedom. And I got to tell you, I've come through, like many of you, quite a few years since 2019. And I am in the process of rebuilding myself. And what I've come to realize about what I'm sharing with you today is that this is the foundation. This is the foundation of a new way. And I invite you to join me on the path. Turns out it's a beautiful view. Thank you so much.